Hello and welcome to another Worthing Watersports video. Sorry I haven't done one in quite a while. It's been actually a very busy summer, which is great for us. We had quite a bad winter here in the UK. We didn't have much wind for almost 6 months. The wind was coming from the east, which was really not very good for our south coast. It's across offshore, which would be good if there was waves, but unfortunately it's a bit dangerous and very flat. But we've had a really good summer so far. It's been really windy, but yeah, been kiting, doing some downwinding on the foils, and yeah, we've had actually enough wind to go proper wave sail windsurfing recently. Went out yesterday on the new boards, and me and Nick went out when they first arrived. His samples arrived, which was maybe 2 weeks ago now. We've basically been very lucky. We've had a couple of days where we can get the boards out in the water and get them wet. But yeah, so going to do a video on the 2026 Duotone windsurfing boards. It is actually the middle of July, which is obviously very early for the new season, but I think they're doing a very good thing and releasing and promoting the equipment earlier. So because these are custom made boards, you can basically spec them up as you like them and get them in as a pre-order. So when the release date, which I think is actually around September when the first batch comes, you get them at the start of the season so you can ride them for a full year. We found in the past that equipment has been released in September. It then takes a couple of months for people to understand the different changes and maybe work out what they want to try, what they want to buy. And then it may be, it might take a while for it to be produced, or maybe stock is limited and then you might not get it until the new season. Also, the wind can be very unreliable. And then you end up with like a season that can be quite short, maybe only 9 months. So I think this is a really good idea. Gets people talking, sorry, Peggy's in the shop window, sunbathing, but also barking at neighbourly dogs. Can you come here, please? Yeah? No. I'll take that as a no. Yeah, basically, rather than having a really short season, hopefully we'll get a full season on these boards. I mean, we've already got some samples, which is great. Very lucky to have Nick nearby and to be trying these out. We had a really good session yesterday near Hove, where the waves get as big as they kind of can on the south coast in this sort of weather, and we were out till sort of gone 8:30, which was amazing and very, very lucky. So I'm going to mainly focus on the GRIP Ultra, they call it now. It's not called the GRIP 4 because it is customizable, as I said, which has got this nice like customized DLAB logo on it, which is quite cool. So where do I start? They come in 3 constructions. I'm pretty sure the main 3 waveboards. So you've got the FreeWave Ultra, which is relatively similar in shape. I think it's been refined a little bit, but you can see it comes in a DLAB, which is, camera follows. This is a DLAB. This is a 94 DLAB, which is, I think, a really smart move because the FreeWave is a very popular board for not just intermediate, but like intermediate to advanced riders who are riding in very similar conditions to what we have on the most of the south coast. Bump and jump. I've done another video on the Ultra, so the shape is very similar. I did a video on that, which I can put in a link somewhere. Don't use YouTube. I'm not very good on YouTube, but at the top there'll be a link to that video if you want to learn about the Ultra, the new shape. Really, really like this new shape. I was a bit skeptical about the changes they made, but it definitely has worked. It's an easier board to use, and actually Deck in the shop, he's been riding the 94 all year and he's been loving it. Pairs really well with the Duke, which also comes in the Duke SLS. But yeah, they've added the DLAB, which I've been using DLAB. I know they're expensive, they are the top end of the range, but the weight reduction, the quality of the build, like the finesse of the design is there. And if it's a board that you're using regularly, maybe the 94, the 104, they're quite popular sizes, I'd really consider getting the DLAB now because they're just the next level. They're not like the Techstream. They had issues with the Techstream, the construction. These boards are bomb-proof. We've had absolutely no issues. This is my GRIP 1, and I've got a 76 as well. And I was using the 76 yesterday. Absolutely love the DLABs. The weight reduction is just, I don't think I've had waveboards I don't think I've ever had waveboards like this before. I said that when I did the review on the grips and did the DLABs. And I think the slalom guys would say the same. This new factory that they're using and this new production process that's making the designs more refined is just making them what you want basically from a windsurfing board. Lightweight, strong. The design, the rails, everything is cut. It's much more sharper, and they're just very good. You just need to try one if you haven't tried one. So yeah, the GRIP, the FreeWave, the Ultra FreeWave now comes in a DLAB construction. There is, I can quickly touch on colours. Most of these are yellow because Nick's obsessed with yellow. There is also this like really crazy orange, which I really like. I've ordered my Ultra. That's the part of the customization. You can choose the colour, you can choose the fin setups on some of the boards, and obviously then you've got the construction choices as well. I think it's around a 3 to 4 month wait. Last year with the DLABs, it was like a cut-off. If you didn't order before a certain date, they weren't made. You have to go wait for the next batch. Whereas I believe you can order at any time, but there will actually be a bit of a wait. But at least you get exactly what you want, exact size, exact colour, and yeah, the exact fin setup, because this, even though it is the Ultra Grip, has actually got 3 fins. I hope you can see that in the video. Nick went for 3 fins to try it out, to see what it's like. I've ordered this board in 4 fins, because I personally, in my experience so far, and having used this board, I do still prefer my 4 fin boards. I just find I'm very light. For some reason, for me, it helps me turn tighter. I'm not particularly experienced with how it really makes a difference. I just find a bigger fin on the rear, I find it harder to drive and carve around the corner tightly. But yeah, so there's the FreeWave now comes in the DLAB, which I think is going to be popular because it's one of the best selling boards in now the lightest and best construction, which is great. Then there is, this is basically the SLS version of the one that's down here, but we've got it in or Nick got it in a 4 fin. So this is the Ultra. So it's the same board as the one that's on the table, but it's in a different construction and it's got 4 fins. This is in the yellow, and I don't have the orange one here, but there is an orange colored one as well. So yeah, I'm pretty sure all 3 of the boards, this isn't the Grip 3. No, this is, sorry, I thought this was the Grip 3. And what I wanted to show you was the FreeWave. They're in the Grip 3, which isn't here, and then the Ultra, and these are both Ultras. This is what I do want to focus on, because these are the biggest changes compared to the Grip 4 that was the board that was for 2025 and 2024, I believe, was a very similar shape. I can't quite remember, lost track, there's so much kit changes, which is great. Where am I going? Grip, yeah, so the Grip 3, it's subtle changes from using it. It's refined, it's more controlled. I would say both the Ultra and the Grip 3 are like very controllable boards. I think we're getting to the point now where we can almost have a one board to fit your quiver. I was on the 88 yesterday. I was pretty stacked on a 4.0. 88 is massive. My previous biggest board last year was an 81. It's a bit heavier because it's an SLS, so it will keep it a little bit lower in the water, but I was actually riding this better than the 82, even though I was very powered up, because I think it had the 4 fins, but it is the way these boards sit and the way they are shaped. They sit slightly lower in the water, not lower in the water, but more just like it's to do with the rails. I'm not that good at shapes. I'm going to ask Duotone if I can get like the 3D models and lay them over the top of each other, so you can really see the actual difference between the Ultra and the Grip 4 from the previous year, because they are quite different. And even just looking at this board on the table here, it's just so flat, and it's just yeah, I don't know how they've done it and why it works, but it's a very, very different shape. Just touching on that, so previously the boards were, the reason why they are so different to the previous year, the old boards were Sebastian, I can't remember his surname, Sebastian Wenzel was the shaper for the previous wave boards. These are now like the Hawaiian Hokeeper style shapes from Kai Hoff, who you will know as the Duotone and previously the North Sail designer, who does all the amazing work with the sails. So this is quite a radical change in terms of the concept. And that's why I do think people should try this before they buy it, which I believe of all the equipment actually that I sell, I would much prefer people who are very happy with their purchase by having tried it. But this is radically quite different. I initially on my first session about 3 weeks ago went out in the 81 just to remember, because I hadn't been windsurfing in a while, what it feels like. And then I swapped over to the 82 from 2026. And the first thing I noticed is it is harder to get planing. It is because of that control feeling, the way it's sort of, I describe it as sits lower in the water, but it doesn't. It feels like initially like it's slower, and you just basically need to bear off the wind quite a little bit harder, which is why I do think you should try this board. And I think a lot of people on the South Coast will actually prefer the Grip 3. I went on the Grip 3 after having ridden this and my other Grip 4, and the fact that I could just jump on it, plug and go, fly off the water, get planing, you know, do jumps, and actually wave riding. There is something they've done to the Grip 3. I might need to speak to the designers. There's something they've done to the Grip 3 that makes it easier to turn. Deck in the shop also wants to transition from a FreeWave to a Grip 3 now, because he's been wave sailing a bit more with us. And also Tim, who's the Ion UK guy, you know, getting into wave sailing has been part of his progression. And I haven't seen him wave ride the way he was wave riding that day with the Grip 3. He was doing like mainly backsides, but I also found when I jumped on the Grip 3, you can get it to go from rail to rail, like really quite like, not necessarily easily, but it engages. So you lean on your heels and it was just going, which makes you feel more confident, makes you feel more, like it just helps your ability, you know, you feel more better than maybe you were. Like, I think the board really helps and complements people progress with their wave sailing. So I'm going to definitely add a Grip 3 into our demo fleet. And I think Deck's going to have a 94 in the shop, which people can come in and try. But yeah, I'm umming and ahhing, and I know Nick's ordered the 78. I do think the smaller sizes would be really interesting to compare against the Grip Ultra, the Ultra Grip, because of how easy the Grip 3 is to use. So although a lot of people want to be on the most radical hardcore shape, like there are disadvantages of being on the most radical hardcore shape. I would say, you know, they are harder to get going. They do need a slightly more powerful wave. You do need a slightly better technique. You need to just be aware and confident that you might not get planing as early as you used to if you're jumping from a different board. And I'd say even from the Grip 4, if you've currently got the Grip 4, jumping to this board, it won't plane quite as easily. But the thing is, it is super controlled, super compact in shape. I think the nose feels very, very short. It's really hard to tell without a measuring tape, but maybe I can grab one. Let me quickly grab one. There's one right there. Maybe it doesn't matter. See if the camera's still following. Maybe it doesn't matter what it actually measures. So from the center of the track is around 89. I bet it's going to be the same. It's a couple of centimeters. I don't know if I'm in the center of the track, but it's a couple of centimeters, maybe 6 or 7 centimeters. But the main thing is it feels smaller. The whole design feels more compact. But the other thing I did notice, I think the tail, so from my rear of my foot strap, 16 centimeters. I bet again it's going to be, yeah. So again, it's another, so it's sort of shifted. So it's 16, it's about 3 to 4 centimeters longer on the tail from the rear of my foot strap, and the same has been taken off. So you're basically effectively further forward on the board, which I guess does complement how it feels. It feels like I'm more like tucked in, more like compact, way more control. I'm not skipping a rail at all, but that's the thing. It doesn't feel quite as fast because you're not further back. You're not using the fin as much. You know, you're not driving. You're using the rails more. You're not getting that like lifty, flighty feeling that say like a FreeWave would feel, especially if you were overpowered or overboarded. We all know how that feels like when you're on a too big a waveboard. You start getting that bouncy, like, I'm not saying that happens on the Grip 4, but this design has basically eradicated that feeling, which is why, you know, that's probably why I was able to sail the 88s yesterday, even though I was stacked on the 44. I never felt like the board felt too big. And I've actually gained a bit of weight, which I'm happy about. I'm 73.5 kilos now. An 88 litre in 4.0 conditions in quite big waves should have been way too much. But because of that compact feeling, I really felt like I could still engage. And I actually, yeah, the conditions did get better, but I really, really enjoyed being on that bigger board. So that might be something to consider. You might find if you really want that radical shape, maybe you want to go slightly bigger on the size, maybe just 5 or whatever the difference is, 6 litres big difference. You might want to go the next size up than what you used to. Maybe I haven't done quite enough testing, because I really want to, when mine arrives, you know, I'll have an exact comparison to what I used to ride. I'll have this in a 4-fin setup. I'll be able to compare the two. But these boards are, what I'm trying to say is these boards are super controllable. Like, and because of that compact design, because we've worked out, you know, the sail is slightly further forward, you're able to engage the rail more easily, and it's more compact, but it does feel a bit slower. So that's why you need that better like a high performance and maybe a slightly higher level of windsurfing. It's not that like just jump on and it just flies. You need to sort of know how to use the board in that way. But it means that, you know, we've now got that in the range. We've now got that board that's super radical and super hardcore. And yeah, I think complements the range really well. FreeWave, Grip 3, and then the Radical Ultra Grip. Yeah, hope that kind of came out in my head. It's sort of, I've been trying to work out how to explain it without saying that this bit's bad and this bit's good or whatever. But hopefully that comes across. And please do leave comments. But the main thing is you come and see them, you come and try them. Even if you're not, you know, UK, I would go to your local dealer. I would, you know, try and get hold of one of these and try it before you buy it. Just because, yeah, there's, you know, you might want to work out the sizes basically. Let me just go through my, after the first few jives felt a little bit weird. You come out the jibe, try and just go across the wind, and it didn't. I had to bear off a little bit more to come out of my jives planing, but after a couple, you know, you just adapt. You just adapt to the style of the board. I had a delivery, but I think it was quite good to have a little pause for myself because I got a bit excited maybe, and just try and, I think I went over it quite well. I've just gone over my notes, and yeah, the main sort of things I wanted to say was there's obviously the most changes happened to the Grip Ultra because it's now designed by Kai Hoff and not Sebastian Wenzel. I said the Grip 3, which I keep thinking this is the Grip 3, but it's not because the one I tried was a very similar colour to this. I thought the Grip 3 was a refined design, but I think it is quite a different design. It is the same concept, you know, it's a slightly easier board to get up and going, but it is still a very good wave board. And what I said is, later in the session, I switched to the Grip 3 in the SLS construction. Straight away, I noticed it's way easier to get planing. It felt faster, more stable, and just super forgiving. Jibes were effortless. The rail engagement was intuitive, which was what I was saying about going hillside and doing backside rising. And it was it had a more conventional waveboard feel, which I think those notes, because it was quite a while ago I tried it, are pretty much bang on. This is going to be a brilliant board for UK sailors. It's still a proper wave board, but it's forgiving and helps your wave riding progress. I'd say it's a perfect setup from a FreeWave board. So, you know, FreeWave, Grip 3, Ultra, Radical, you know, Cornwall, down the line, Point Breaks. This Grip 3 is still going to definitely do it and probably be easier to do it. But if you're trying to get to that next level, which is why I'm going for the Grip 4, I really want to get my riding like super, super high level. I want to go for that, but I still think I might have a Grip 3 in the van. Just, I don't know if the conditions are maybe a bit too hard or not quite perfect. But you know, I'm light. I get away with it. You know, I can make it work. Construction, I didn't quite touch. There is actually 3 constructions this year. There's not just 2. Why are you so scared? She's got a new toy. 1 second. Let's pause the video again. Here you go. I bought her a new toy to keep her preoccupied whilst I do these videos. At this point, there could be some crazy shots of me on the water. Or Nick on the water because he had the camera on yesterday. But yeah, she's managed to pick up this new toy she's got and put it in the cupboard. Anyway, that's not windsurfing chat and probably boring some of you. Construction, yes. So I think we all know windsurfing has got quite expensive. Trying to keep things, is the camera following me? I think Duotone are very good at creating products that basically get people on the water. And like sometimes price point can be the reason for that, you know, to be an issue for some people. I'd say windsurfing is, when people come in the shop and they're like, I want to pick up a water sports, we all know that windsurfing can be not quite as practical as winging or kite surfing because of the, you know, the size of the boards. Then you've got to store them, obviously the cost, you've got mast sails. So they do a standard construction in, I don't know if the Ultra Grip does come in standard construction, and the Grip 3 comes in standard construction, and the FreeWave comes in the standard construction. So there are 3 constructions for all of the 3 of these boards. So there is the standard, there is the SLS, and then there is the DLAB. They are, I don't know if they're all made in the same factory. That's not something I want to necessarily comment on. I know last year the SLS and DLAB were both made in the new Duotone factory, so they're both made the same spec. I believe the standard, hopefully someone who watches this video who works for Duotone can comment below to make sure I'm saying everything super accurately. but let's have a look. So the standard construction is full custom PVC, so it's a wood construction. So it's basically the weight is the most noticeable thing on the standard construction. But as I'm aware, and what they said in the promotional, it is the cheapest production waveboard on the market. So that is basically opening the door and making windsurfing more accessible to everyone. And it obviously created a range, so you can basically get the quality, the performance, and the weight that you want based on how much you can basically afford, which I think is really, really good. So you can get, you know, the best shape, the most radical shape. Maybe windsurfing isn't your main sport. Maybe you do lots of mountain biking or something, but you want to have the, you know, the latest shape, the latest design, but you don't want to spend, you know, I think these are like £2,500 now. The DLABs, I believe. Oh God, I should have written this down. I don't want to say the numbers. I think it's best to just go to our website and look at the prices. It's well under £2,000 for the standard construction, and then the SLS is somewhere in the middle. I think the SLS is just over £2,000. So yeah, you can get a brand new waveboard. It is heavier. Obviously, I really like the DLAB. I'm used to it now, having that like lightness under your feet, especially when you're jumping or trying to do aerials or tricks. Like I'm trying to do a lot of 360s and goose screws at the moment. Having very little weight, which is why my sails are DLAB, you know, everything is as light as it possibly can be. I find I'm in control. I can control and maneuver the board. I don't have a huge amount of strength in my legs. I find that the weight reduction helps me get planing. Everything feels light and airy and like I can maneuver it. But when I'm in the air and I'm doing loops and stuff, the weight, the pendulum swing of the board isn't controlling me. You know, this is a sample. This is the one we used yesterday, but this is supposedly 300 to 400 kilos. Kilos, that would be a very heavy board. Grams heavier than the production one. So I wanted to do a weigh-in this video, but because these are samples, the layups weren't finalized. I've been told this board isn't as light as it is going to be, the SLS. And I actually did feel like I didn't want to do as many like aerial tricks with this board because I just found it's also an 88. It had quite a lot of like, you know, swing weight on my ankles. I'm not that, you know, into riding boards that are heavy, but when this is 300 grams lighter, this will be, the SLS I think will be absolutely fine and very, very good for jumping. Yeah, but then, yeah, so maybe if you're not jumping so much, maybe the standard construction could be good, but you are still going to feel the extra weight when you're riding the waves, whether you're jumping or not. You know, weight reduction for me in the last few years does make quite a big difference to performance, but it's obviously a cost thing. So, you know, go with what you can. That was the construction. I'm trying to think of anything else. So yeah, 3 and 4 fin in the Ultra. You can change what fin setup you like. They're available to order in August. So we're in the middle of July. So, you know, in about a month's time, or when you watch this video, because I won't be able to release it till then, you'll be able to basically order these. So yeah, get in contact. Just trying to think, you might want to see a bit more of an overview of the shape of the board. So the Ultra, just the one I'm using the most. I'm not really going to comment too much on the shape and design. I'm hoping I can get some 3D models. This is the 3-fin version. I believe we used to have grips that were 5-fin boxes in the back. They've stopped doing that because of weight, but also it's very hard to get them in the optimum position. You know, they've reduced the amount of adjustment that there is in the fin boxes, and also the deck plate positioning that all got reduced so that people don't put them in the wrong place for the design. I think that was one of the reasons why they didn't want to have 5 fin boxes, is because it kind of like, yes, it might make it more adjustable, but people might put them in the wrong place and then feel like the board isn't how it's meant to be ridden, or how it's meant to be designed, or how it's, you know, how it's meant to feel more importantly. So they've reduced it to make things a bit simpler, and you basically choose. Most people kind of know which one they prefer. And yeah, I wouldn't say it's down to conditions. I'd say it's just down to rider preference and maybe your style. I personally just I really like the 4-fin setup now. But yeah, I would say the grip, I really like the grip 3 for that kind of easier to use feeling. Hopefully you can see that on the camera, this board. It's quite a flat deck. Do notice the deck, the same as the Ultra, that had a similar sort of concept, which I noticed in that video. That was actually a lot flatter in between the foot straps. This isn't so flat in between. There is a little flat panel there in between the foot straps, but I do notice when I'm coming out tacks and jibes that this top deck area here is quite flat, which I think does help get that flat foot forward and help you get planing, points your toes forward. But probably the more importantly is the bottom. But yeah, maybe I'll run the camera down the board in a second and you can sort of see the outline and the shape close up. But I'm not going to comment on it because I'm not a board designer and I do not 100% know what it does. All I can say is how it feels. And it's just, yeah, more compact and more controlled. I'm definitely waffling, so I'm going to try and round it up now. So I'm just going to go through my bullet points. So Duotone Waveboard overview, new shapes. New shaper is Kai Hoff, the guy who made the sails. There's 3 models, but there's the GRIP Ultra and the GRIP 3 are the main waveboards. The Ultra available in a thruster or quad, radical performance and shape. And the GRIP 3 is a new design, more user-friendly, fast and progressive, but that does not mean it is not still a good waveboard. I do think the GRIP 3 is a good option for a lot of people. The GRIP Ultra highlights, shorter nose, longer tail, compact outline, slower to plane, but incredibly smooth and controllable once going. That's bang on as a sentence. More technical to jibe and get moving. I'm not sure if that was my right sort of notes. I wouldn't say it's more technical to jibe. I would just say as you come out of the jibe and as you get off the beach, you need to bear off a little bit more. Ideal in proper waves with power from the wave. You know, that's the same with any waveboard. You're going to have a lot more fun if you've got a decent wave. Personally, I'd say for all these boards, they're all going to be best in the DLAB construction where weight saving weight saving comes into play. The GRIP 3, fast, stable, easy to plane, conventional feel with great control through the chop. Yeah, I remember doing the same test where I kind of got off the beach, got planing and just did a slalom run, you know, just through the chop and through the waves, and both of them super controlled. And just both of them super controlled, but I'd just say that like the FreeWave and that change of the design they did from the year before to the Ultra, the GRIP 3 has that and this one has it as well, but it's where you can just sort of sit down, put the hammer down and just fly over chop. And it's just a really nice feeling to not feel like you're out of control and you're not so skitty. And yeah, I really like that about a board. I think that's sort of, I think if you can ride faster, you can start then concentrate. You're not concentrating on being in control. You're concentrating on what you're going to do, where the wave is, you know, where you're going to turn around or where you're, going to get yourself in position. If you're not worrying about being out of control, you know, you can start thinking about, well, I might hit this ramp and do a trick or something. But if you already feel out of control going towards the wave, there's no way you're going to pull the trigger and try and go for a forward. So, and I think speed is quite important, or comfortable speed is quite important for doing tricks. Conventional feel, excellent for UK conditions, smaller waves and progression, forgiving through the jibes and rail turns. SLS or standard constructions both feel great due to the easier shape. Yep. Final thoughts. I think I've gone over it enough times. But yeah, I'll do some close-ups of this board. I'll try and get some graphics to lay over the top so you can see the maybe like a rocker line of both the two boards so you can see the difference. Come in three different colors. There's this one which is the white and purple. There is this one which comes, all 3 boards come in a similar concept to this, so yellow with orange on the bottom. And then there is also one that's basically a full bleed orange, which looks pretty mad with the carbon. You can see on this board here all the different layups. You know, they've reinforced around the box, around the foot straps. You can see around there. There's also reinforcement on the nose. You can see the reinforcement around the deck plate. And I think, yeah, when the colours, like the orange one is really cool. I really like the orange one, but I do also really like this custom. I think it looks like a prototype. The white's very popular. I think it's very nice. And goes with a lot of sails because it's a bit more neutral. But yeah, hope you like that video. I will be putting content over the top. I think I'm also going to do a separate video of just me and Nick riding on the boards. Yeah, leave any comments, or if you want me to do a review on any other products, I will do a weigh-in once we get some of the boards, but I like them to all be the same size so it's a fair comparison. I think that's it. Hope you guys are all getting wind on the water and getting on the water, whatever you're doing, windsurfing, winging or whatever. Yeah, next is probably the sails, because there are some slight tweaks to the DLAB that I'd like to work out what exactly they are, because they did tweak it the year before, but these sails are amazing. Yeah, cool. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.